Thank you very much. And coming straight to it, somebody asked the question, how do you build 100 cities? And you say you build it city at a time. You build it brick by brick, school by school, and road by road, and eventually you have cities. Most cities have grown organically, and India is taking an ambitious project to build cities out, which is not not organic growth entirely, but more of an inorganic growth. So let's start with Mr. Bhardwaj.
Thank you very much, Mr. Singh. I think this is a very, very interesting time for us, and the announcement of 100 smart cities has certainly sparked a lot of debate and a lot of ideas, and a lot of such forums, not just in Delhi, but in Bombay, Chennai, and all the other metros about how we bring this to life. So if we do look at some of the numbers, we will get an idea of what this entails. So about 31% of India today lives in urban cities, in urban areas, and this 31% contributes approximately 60% to the GDP. So that itself gives you an idea of what the weightage of this 31% of the Indian population is. We are building these smart cities not only for the greater good of the nation as we see it as it progresses into 2020 in the vision that we have for this country, but also for the common man and for the citizens that inhabit these smart cities and these cities which are going to grow up. So I think for us, defining why we are building these cities will go a long way in actually developing these smart cities. And I think all of us here have their own vision of what a smart city is expected to be like. The second thing I want to say is this is not a novel idea. We are recreating history. It's just that we have better technology, so we call it smart. We are going to build a city which is safe, efficient, for the greater good, and therefore it must have a certain design built into it. The design that was built into a lot of those cities, especially when you see on the eastern side of the Iron Curtain, served that greater good, but they also did not attract that sort of investment or the sort of people that were supposed to be there. So you did have very well created and regulated communities, but they did not attract what they had probably set out to be. So one element got fixed, but the other didn't. And that disparity that those smart cities or created cities happened in the 1940s eventually ended up having a disparity in income levels, in the economic activity that happened around those areas, and then they ended up being those cities that nobody wanted to really invest in or go to. That is something that we should learn from. I think history is a great teacher. We have a lot more technology, but the idea of creating it could remain very much the same. Third point is that safety today is an element of smartness. Today, when we talk of safety, it is not only safety for the worst incidents that we can tend to think of, but it is simply having safety in terms of the common man crossing a street, in terms of an electric substation being properly secured to make sure that electricity is available. It is every element of smartness that a road that has been built is not dug up 3 weeks later because a phone line has gone down and there was no cooperation between the various departments, which ends up in potholes throughout the urban areas. So if we are creating these smart cities and we are getting into this idea of cohesion, collaboration, the smartness has to start from the very beginning of the inception of the city, the collaboration between the various civil departments, the collaboration between safety for common citizens, and then rising into safety for industry, intellectual property, and the laws that have to be governed around it. So therefore, I think when we look at smartness, we have to be a lot smarter in the planning and the definition of what we want to do. I know my time is limited, so I will make one final point. India is a tremendously diverse country. And India has had a lot of success in the development that it has had. We do have a population dividend. So one thing we certainly don't want to do is superimpose one model of a smart city into different parts of the country. That itself, I think, would take away from the competitive advantage that all of our regions tend to have. So if we in the Planning Commission at one point were talking of the Bangalore-Chennai corridor, the idea of developing that corridor is clearly to have trade with the East and have trade with Asia. Well, there is a certain amount of human capital that exists in the Bangalore-Chennai corridor as opposed to the Delhi-Mumbai corridor. And let us take advantage of the human capital, the people who will inhabit those smart cities. Let's make sure that smartness also means that industries that we want to attract into those regions develop into a competitive advantage for that region. And the final point, of course, is skill development for everyone who's going to live there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please.
The first most important component, in my view, is a basic master plan. A master plan that should be made clearly defining and laying out the transportation infrastructure, the services infrastructure, the water supply, sewage, everything that goes with, the infrastructure requirements. But side by side with that, what is urgently required today is that for each and every sector of the proposed smart city, we need a detailed three-dimensional urban development of what we call the urban design framework. This should be done in a manner which clearly defines the nature of the anticipated ultimate form and also defining clear limits of development. But this again, please don't misunderstand this, because although this is required, until now it's not been done anywhere in the country. I mean, we just don't prepare these kind of three-dimensional models before we actually start building. But these models don't have to be absolutely finite in the sense that this is the only way. It has to be a flexible model. But it does define, for instance, the basic intent behind the plan. What kind of spaces are we providing? What kind of buildings are we building? What kind of facilities are we giving? And these things have to be very, very clearly sort of made part of this proposed smart city without any communal facilities whatsoever, But by these communal facilities, I mean facilities like schools, parks, children's play areas, local shopping, police stations, fire stations, post offices, banks, meeting halls, space for communal functions, health centers, hospitals, etc. All these are fundamental elements, but believe me, at the present moment, this is just indicated in master plans, but not always provided. And we cannot sort of, just cram large numbers of low-income groups into multi-story blocks and have no support facilities along with this. So this is something that has to be understood. But side by side with this, there is another very important element that needs to be considered. That the land for all these communal facilities needs to be given at fixed rates and not as is currently being done at market prices to the highest bidder. Communal facilities are facilities which are essential facilities for the population. These need to be given at a fixed rate, along with strict guidelines laid down for limits of development and the nature of development, the nature of services they are expected to provide. All this should be clearly defined. These are all elements that need to be part of a plan. And if this is not there, then you just get what you currently have. That is, these are spaces which are all exploited on a purely commercial basis. Those are not what we envisage as the smart cities of the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ranjit. Otherwise, he was going to get carried away and, describing things don't work, but that's beside the point.